Are AI and automation a double-edged sword? As we embrace the future with digital twins and virtual assistants, are we ready to tackle the ethical dilemmas and potential job disruptions they bring? Join us on PhraSEOlogy plus AI, where we dive into the controversial topic of universal basic income and explore whether it can be a viable solution for a workforce that's increasingly dominated by AI. This is PhraSEOlogy plus AI with your hosts Filipe and Miguel Santos. As a digital marketing professional specializing in SEO for over 20 years, I've worked with companies from startups to the global Fortune 500. Learn how to gain an unfair advantage with AI as we uncover tips, tools, and strategies. So today in this episode, we're going to discuss work disruption, universal basic income, AI automation, and some controversies. Helena Liu of Product Camps and Exams PM is going to discuss a wide range of amazing topics today. And that includes artificial intelligence, data decision-making, and automation. With that, I would say, Helena, obviously you have over 3 years of experience in AI and automation, 12 years in analytics and project management. But I would love for you to go a little bit deeper, venture a little bit deeper into the background.
Yeah, I started off starting my first business back in 2013, and I had a full-time job actually at that time. I was working at IBM, so started as a side hustle that just kind of grew, and it took about 6, almost 7 years before I was kind of making the same amount at my job and my side hustle teaching project management. And that's when I decided back in end of 2017 that I was going to go at it full time and kind of like never looked back since. And so after I grew the project management business to 7 figures, and I decided I wanted to do something else. So for me, it was always asking what's next, like how else can I add value to people, right? And then that was kind of around the time actually before ChatGPT even launched. It was still Jasper, and everyone was amazed that there's this tool that can write. So that's what really got me into AI, and I was just like, this is definitely going to be the future when I saw ChatGPT launched, and just kind of knew that it was something that I really wanted to be involved in. So when ChatGPT came out in 2022, that's what really got me really excited about AI. I just knew this was kind of going to be the future, so I just dived headfirst into it. I didn't know what I was going to do with the space because I still had all my project management business that I was still really passionate and excited about running. But like I just went down that rabbit hole and read and watched everything I could. And finally, I figured out what I want to do in the space. And that's how Product Camps was born.
As an automation expert, what are some simple steps that you would kind of advise individuals and small businesses to take in order to incorporate automation into their workflows, especially like
Yeah,
AI
so
on the
I would
scene?
first take a look at what workflows are you doing manually. So taking an inventory of everything that you're doing every day, like and logging that and asking your employees to do the same. And you should be doing this anyways, even without AI. As someone with a project management background, you should always be making your SOPs, for everything that you do, so that even if one person in your company leaves, that the person taking over is not completely blind. So you should be taking inventory of all and making a process of everything you're doing anyways. So that would be the starting point. And then when you have all of those SOPs in place, then it's taking a look at what does those procedures look like and where can AI come in and take over those tasks. Like if someone's manually adding, this is a little bit of a stupid example, but just to illustrate the point. If one of your SOPs was whenever someone buys a product, then you have an employee go in and grant them the access manually. That's a pretty obvious thing that you could start to automate. You would just create probably like a make or Zapier automation that would connect the digital product or physical product that you have to the checkout form so that whenever someone buys that product, they get the product automatically. But you would go through that whole same process, look at what tools are used, what the procedure looks like, take an inventory of everything, try to see where are the gaps and make the changes accordingly.
That's amazing. And I think that's great advice. Most folks just don't know where to start. And that sounds like a pretty simple way to get started and just figuring out at least what you'd like to automate.
Well, just to even back up from there, the first step I would say would not be to automate. I would say the first step would actually just like be create. What I mean by create is just training ChatGPT to write in your own voice, maybe creating some custom GPTs and just sharing it within your own company, seeing what content you always create on repeat, whether that's RFPs or proposals or social media content, blog posts, VSLs, whatever it may be. Come up with your own structure and tone of voice, and then train some custom GPTs on that so that your team is getting familiar with using AI. And then I would say then the second step would be to start automating, right? You kind of want to go and implement AI in your organization in steps and not get everyone on board all at the same time, which can be overwhelming, I would say. Before you even start to automate, I think it's probably a good first step. It reminds me back in the days, a summer internship implementing SAPs. And they always say when you're implementing SAP, there's 3 steps: you crawl, you walk, and then you run. So you want to like kind of start slow with your team and implement AI slowly. The good first step is creating some custom GPTs. Take the existing writing samples that you already have for whatever writing that you may have, VSLs, proposals, social media content, blog posts, whatever, and create these series of custom GPTs that write in your own voice, in your own brand's voice, that you and your team can take as a first step. Use that to create new content, which was on the way there. The team just look it over, and that introduces them to AI. And as they get more familiar, then add on, additional things to them.
Was very
Yeah.
interesting.
I often hear people say it's, this quote like, it's not AI that will replace your job, it's the people who know how to use AI that will. And from my experience, it's a little bit different from that. I think AI will replace jobs, but low level jobs.
So Helena, how is AI kind of transforming virtual assistants, the traditional assistant roles right now? Are certain jobs being replaced in a sense?
Mhm.
Talk a little
Yeah,
bit
for
about
sure.
that.
And there's a quote that's kind of been going around, quoted by the media a lot, that says like, it's not AI that will replace your jobs; it's people who know how to use AI that will. And I kind of have to disagree with that because, from my experience, the truth is AI is replacing a lot of jobs, but it's not what you think. It's the artificial intelligence is a different type of intelligence than human intelligence. So if you're just someone who's wanting to do work that's repetitive, that you can copy and paste, that you can have like a binder step by step process on how to do something, and you're resistant to change, you don't want to learn new things, then yeah, your job is going to be replaced. But there's good news to that as well. While AI is replacing some of those jobs, it's also creating new jobs as well. And so it is scary and exciting at the same time. So if you're someone who's very used to doing things and are resistant to change, then yeah, I can see that being scary. But if you're willing to learn a new skill set, if you're willing to change and adapt, it's actually a huge opportunity as well. So that's how I see it happening. From my personal experience, I made a video about this last week about my thoughts on UBI and my personal experience with it. Of course, I read all of the headlines, like many other people, about how AI is taking away hundreds of millions of jobs, depending on the economists who did the estimates and how they did it. But it's a staggering. It's a staggering number. Whenever you read a stat, it feels impersonal. 87 million jobs replaced. Doesn't You don't feel it. But last week, I actually let go of my actual human assistant because I replaced her with AI, and that's when it actually hit home for me on a more like emotional level. All the stats you read, all the articles you read, there's nothing that, until you feel it and kind of sit beside that person and tell them, there was nothing that really kind of prepare you for that moment. And that's when it kind of hit me like, oh my God, AI is going to replace jobs. So I just did it. And that's when I actually felt kind of like the power of this technology. It gave me a new perspective on things.
Yeah, and I think most people are kind of scared of that, and for good reason, right? Like if it's a job you've gotten accustomed to and it's relatively simple for automation technology or like for AI to actually
Hmm.
replace, it's a little terrifying, especially if you're good at it and you've done it for a long time. So real quick, I guess folks could really benefit from knowing what you would advise them to
Hmm.
do in order to avoid that situation, or at least to make themselves more valuable enough that this doesn't happen to
Well,
them?
it's about understanding the technology and understanding what it could do. Like AI is really good at text generation, like image generation. And then when you add in the automation part, but you need APIs to automate, right? Like the example I gave earlier of you don't need someone manually after they purchase to grant them access anymore. There's APIs that do those kind of things. So I would look at which platforms has which APIs, what these APIs can do, and you know that those are going to be the first ones to automate because if someone's coming in to automate things, that would be the first thing that they do. So taking inventory of the software that's being used in your organization and what the APIs can do is a good starting point of the first things that's going to be automated. And AI is coming, whether we like it or not. It's kind of like back in the 90s, the internet is coming, whether we liked it or not. And so being prepared for it is understanding what it is, learning the basics at least, so you know what's out there and you know what's coming, and also start acquiring soft skills because that's something AI can't do. So leadership, project management, and those are all things that AI can't do that humans do really well. So almost doing things that don't scale because AI is so good at scaling is something that can really help you. And another thing that I mentioned is in project management, there's this concept called tacit knowledge versus explicit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is things that are easy to codify. So if I wanted to give you a procedure, I can write step 1, step 2, step 3, and I can say, Felipe, go do this. Those are the tasks that are easiest for AI to start automating. So you want to acquire more tacit knowledge versus explicit knowledge. So explicit knowledge is things that you learn from your experience, and it's things that is harder to codify because it's your own way of doing things. It's things that are unique to you. So find things that are more tacit knowledge, acquire more emotional intelligence, acquire, and be better at communicating with people, leading teams. These are the skill sets that's going to be very hard for AI to replace. And of course, have a basic understanding of AI as well, at least going into the years to come.
Helena, I would love to you kind of covered some of this
Mhm.
already, but maybe if you can go a little bit more into the advantages and disadvantages or limitations of using virtual assistants versus having human assistants, because we're talking about that, and I think it would be helpful to outline that for clarity.
Yeah, I can automate a lot of the repetitive questions that you get in your inbox a lot, but it's not as great as at performing actions at the moment. And so so humans can kind of come in and add that extra layer of context. A lot of times AI can only see the context in the thread of emails, but they may not necessarily know that this person purchased this or that person purchased that. Like they don't have insight into more maybe a broader look at the situation. So there's definitely a need for human assistants. I'm not suggesting that human assistants are obsolete. In fact, I'm actually on the hunt to find another one. But that person can't just be like, just depend on me for a list of FAQs, and then they just copy and paste to the inquiries, right? That person has to have a deeper understanding of what's going on in these cases because all of those repetitive things that I can just make a list of FAQs, AI can take care of all of that. To really be able to be an assistant go in the years to come, you have to have a deeper understanding of the business and be able to provide more support or context and correct the AI when it's wrong, right?
Makes sense. And how about on the flip side? So for businesses that want to integrate these virtual assistants into their
Mhm.
operations, how would you advise they get started?
Well, there's really two routes with any kind of implementation, right? You can do it yourself or you can hire a firm to do it. That brings me to another project management concept, make or buy analysis. It's important for them to take an inventory of the pros of doing something and the cons, and then look at the cost. If they're not as tech savvy, for example, it's probably best to hire an external party to help them implement it. But if they are more tech savvy, perhaps they want to do it in house and keep that skill set in house. So it's a very personalized decision at that point, and it depends on their internal skill set, and it depends more on their long term strategy too. Whether if they want to have it in house, then course, they have to hire and manage all the people that's building that themselves. So it is a skill set that they should have internally before they even decide to take that on as a project internally.
Okay. And moving into section 2, talking about digital twins, AI, and ethical considerations. This is a bigger topic, but we started talking about this in the introduction a little bit. Could you explain what maybe digital twins are so that folks can just catch up with us here and maybe how they're used?
I'm not really an expert on that specific topic, so I will probably not speak about it publicly until I'm more familiar with that specific topic, as it's still very new and I haven't done my in-depth research on that. So perhaps another time I can provide a more educated comment on that.
Sounds good. Fair. So let's switch maybe to talking a little bit more about what industries, based off of what you know about digital twins, what industries might be able to use that technology
Well,
coming
there's
up?
no industry that is limited. There's practical applications for AI in literally every industry. What I would say is look at the problem that you're solving. Don't look at the solution first. And I know AI is kind of like the shiny new topic right now, but whenever you approach any business issues in general, it's looking at what is the problem first, and is AI the best tool to solve that problem versus the reverse, looking at the tool first, like, AI or digital twin or whatever, and then trying to place a problem onto that, right? So
Makes sense. Well, I know you've been waiting for this particular segment, and so have I. But talking about the ethical concerns around AI, right? So there's the uses, the transformation, the improvement of AI technology over a short period of time. I would love for you to kind of explore a little bit of those ethical issues that you see that most companies would kind of face.
ethical issues with implementing AI.
Yes. I think that's a good place to
Yeah,
start.
there's the ability to clone someone's voice and face that's going to come with issues. There's probably going to be more scams coming out with people being able to mimic other people's voices and then give their loved ones a call and pretend to be that person and ask for money. Obviously, there's more because a lot more problems that can arise from that. But I think at the same time, you can use this technology to do a lot of good and save a lot of time and create a lot more productivity in businesses. So for me, I think I would rather focus on the positive and how we can all benefit from this and scale rather than focusing how can we use this kind of for bad, because there's always two ways you can look at things, either the glass that's half full or half empty. And I think I just kind of take a more optimistic approach with this technology.
Makes sense. There are a lot of ways, I think, to detect whether it's something that could be a scam, right? And all that. So that kind of technology is being built out. And I think that'll
Yeah.
help people as we get into the point of those things being so good and
Well,
convincing.
it's
But
already
yeah,
gone so good. Like Sora, there's also Vasa one from Microsoft. They already have this technology, but they are currently too scared to release it because it is so real. And they're concerned about the ethics, so they don't want the technology to kind of be readily available without checks and balances in place for people to and of course to until these ethical concerns are addressed. Yeah.
releasing
Yeah.
it.
Powerful technologies are already here, like Sora and Vasa one from Microsoft, but they are choosing not to release it purposely because of the ethical concerns and how realistic it already is. And the reason they're not releasing it is they
Mhm.
want to make sure they have the checks and balances in place so that this technology is used in a safe and ethical way. Right. But yeah, we are already at the point when this technology already exists.
About how folks can think about making themselves more valuable in this age. What skills do you think are going to be most valuable as AI starts to advance? We talked about the tacit versus what you think AI can do, but are there any other viewpoints or bits of advice?
Probably learning AI itself, learning AI and automations itself is a good starting point at the moment because things become less scary when you understand what it is. So if you're scared of your job being replaced by AI, it's a good idea to understand what's replacing you and where you're going up against before you come up with the appropriate strategy for your next move. So I would say that's probably a good starting point.
Makes sense. And then in terms of like a UBI, because you mentioned universal basic income, it's gaining traction. There are a lot of articles about it. How do you see UBI, based off of what you read and addressing the potential job displacement that's caused by AI? No, I was asking you basically how the idea of universal basic income is in addressing potential AI displacement.
I think it
I should
sounds
say.
good in theory. I don't personally believe it's going to work in practice because, well, when we think about how is the government going to raise this money, and that's going to bring other problems because they can raise this money by printing more money or taxing or borrowing. That's really the only three ways that they can raise this money, and each of it comes with its own drawbacks. If you start printing more money, then it's going to lead to more inflation in the economy. What is a basic wage may not be a basic wage when everything gets inflated. And we kind of saw this happening with all the money printing that happened during 2020 with the whole situation that can't be named. And everyone got to stay at home and got a paycheck because of that. But now we're seeing because the government was printing money to be able to pay for that, now we're seeing massive inflation. So every course of action that the government tries to take to correct something else will also have drawbacks and consequences, unintended, of course. But I think it's important to address all of those. I don't know what the right solution is, what the best course of action is. I'm just kind of looking at things from more of a neutral perspective and looking at the pros and cons of what's involved.
Are there any opposite opinions? Like, so UBI might be a good solution, but there are drawbacks. And you mentioned some of the drawbacks in terms of like the options that we have for raising that money. Are there any other arguments that you would think where UBI is just not the right solution?
Well, it depends on what perspective you take. And I don't think it's the right solution, but I also don't know if there's another solution. So it might be the best solution that we have available. While I don't know the answers, I can just look at the pros and cons of every side, if that makes sense.
We can kind of go into the last piece, which is to kind of talk about maybe your top 3 tips for listeners. Anything you want to talk about with regard to AI, automation?
Sure, let's wrap up with that. So my top 3 tips for AI and automations would be probably start with prompt engineering, know how to talk to the bots. That's probably a good first step to begin with. And then after that, it's seeing where daily life or job you can start to incorporate some of these things. As a third step, it's like what I was saying before with the SAP implementations. They always talk about crawl, walk, and then run. And the third step, look at how you can start automating some of these things, right? So first step, probably learn the basics of prompt engineering. And then second step, start to see where you can incorporate it in your daily job, daily life, and also go beyond ChatGPT too. There's so many good tools out there. And I know ChatGPT has kind of become synonymous with AI, but AI is way more than just ChatGPT. So take a look at some of the other popular tools. And then, as a third step, look at how you can start using AI to automate things that are repetitive. And as a third step, you can look at how to automate repetitive processes. So I just said, as a third step, you can look at how to automate repetitive processes. All right.
Well, thank you, Helena. I implore everybody to kind of check out your YouTube channel because it is extremely interesting and a lot of really good tutorials, ways about tools that you're using. And I think that folks can learn a lot from just watching those bits of content that you put out there. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about how people can get in touch with you, follow you, kind of see what
you
you're
can
up
go
to.
to productcamps.com. There's a free course there that you can take on AI and automations as well. Just go to productcamps.com/free. And you can also look up at my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Helena Liu. So you can look me up on YouTube or take my course and connect with me on LinkedIn. Just again, look up my name and you'll be able to find my LinkedIn profile. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Okay.